Tractor lovers are usually quite excited about the versatility of their tractors, about how they can run all these different attachments, do a lot of different things to solve problems around their property. But when I'm reading online, there's one attachment that seems to get viewers, I'll say it, charged up more than other attachments, and that's a PTO powered generator. A lot of folks think that's just a poor attachment to be running on a tractor. I agree with them sometimes, and I don't sometimes. We're going to go into that in depth in this episode. We're also going to talk about the different types of generators available, the different types of PTO generators specifically available, and just give you an overview in case you are looking for something like this, a PTO powered generator. Let's get started. Are you going to get footprints all over my tractor? At least you haven't been outside yet. Now I'll get to that hard question about should you use a tractor to power your generator or should you use another type of a generator in just a moment. But I feel like in order to handle that question, I need to talk about the different types of generators that are available, some advantages and disadvantages of each type. I'm going to start with what I'm going to call a standby generator. That seems to be the name that's used most often when I see them online. One of the major manufacturers for that's Generac, right? And usually they are all covered. They're meant to sit outdoors permanently right beside your house or somewhere close. They're powered by diesel or natural gas or propane. Probably makes most sense to use a natural gas or propane because you would have it there on site all the time at your house probably. Those generators are available in any size you might want, and they would typically be used to power your whole house in event of some sort of a power failure. One great advantage of those generators is that they can be configured to automatically start up, automatically power on when the power goes out. So that's a tremendous way to handle backup power for your own house. The negative of that type of generator, well, there's two that I can think of. One is it's not portable, right? So you can't use it anywhere except for at your house. The other negative is that you have to pay extra, you have to pay a lot to have that engine permanently mounted there and permanently attached to a fuel source when it's only used for power outage. That's its only purpose in life. The third disadvantage is you really need to, yeah, I said there was two, and then I came up with three. The third is that you need to exercise that generator periodically. I don't know, once a quarter, once a month. If you're a big hospital or something, you have to do it. You have to document that your generator and your backup power system works. I spent a few years working with that particular type of system that actually did the exercising on such generators via software. So that's a good style if you're only wanting to back up your home. It's not necessarily a good style for portability. It's going to be a little more expensive, but it probably is the top of the line for that particular purpose. Now, let's go to the other extreme. The portable generators that you might see in even Harbor Freight or Northern Tool, you'll see some small generators that are portable. Usually they have this little tube steel frame. They'll have a single cylinder or two cylinder engine like a Briggs & Stratton Vanguard or perhaps a Honda engine or something in between. And then they'll have a generator connected right to it. Those generators, they oftentimes have wheel kits that come with them. Mine that I have up here has a wheel kit, and so it's quite portable. That's an advantage. Another advantage is they're quite cost effective. They're cheap for initial purchase price, right? Disadvantages is they have a limited fuel tank, and really you probably shouldn't store fuel in them because the little carburetors on those engines will gum up over time. The longevity of the fuel supply, it's something you're going to have to maintain, or make sure you drain all the fuel out of it periodically. Again, you're going to have to test this system. You're just going to have to put some thinking into whether this generator is ready to go when you need it. Also, these generators are typically not available in large sizes, right? So they're pretty small. They're down to 2,500 kilowatts all the way up to, maybe 17,000, 18,000. That's about the biggest that I have seen of those styles. Now, if we go a little bit smaller yet, there's been some people on YouTube, of course, showing these EcoFlow and other branded essentially battery backups that can be used to power some stuff while you're camping. I have chosen, at least so far, not to show any of those on my channel. I don't have anything against them. I don't know, for whatever reason, I thought that wasn't in line with what our viewers wanted to see. So I haven't shown any of those, even though those companies have reached out to me. So we've covered the fixed generator, we've covered the small portables. Both of those have engines attached to them, and have all the maintenance surrounding that. But they both have their advantages and both have their purposes. Now, I think somewhere in between that is where the tractor PTO generator lands. I say in between because the tractor PTO generator can go all the way from the smallest power needs to some of the biggest. Baumalight, for example, has one that requires 155 horsepower. It's 3-phase. I don't even know how many kilowatts it'll generate, but it would be used for something like a large dairy farm or other livestock where they've got a lot of power needs and they have to be ready when the power goes out, and they have to supply a lot of power. But none of these require their own engine, right? You can use your tractor for that purpose. You're going to know typically that your tractor is in running condition. Fuel is not going to get stale in it. Typically, you'll be using it for other purposes. We started out with that, right? Your tractor is well suited for a variety of tasks, and so presumably you're going to be using it in an ongoing basis, and it will be ready to go when you need it. Of course, it doesn't have the advantage of an auto start when your power goes out at your house. You're not going to be able to use that with a tractor PTO generator. I suppose one could plumb something up and get it all electrical wired, but that would be unique, I would say. And so a corresponding advantage then is that a tractor PTO generator is going to be slightly cheaper than one of those large standby generators. It also maintains the portability, right? So let's say that you're a good neighbor and the power goes out in the entire community. It happens at my in-laws when they have hurricanes in the area in the southeast. And my father-in-law has a tractor PTO generator that he runs at his house most of the time in that scenario. But daily, he makes a run with his tractor PTO generator and goes to the neighbors and runs their house for about an hour to get their freezers cold again, or to keep them relatively cold so that they don't have food spoilage. And that's it fits in with what we do with our compact tractors, right? I mean, that aspect fits us perfectly. We typically want to help our neighbors and kind of share some goodwill with our tractors. At least we do, and a lot of our viewers have expressed that. So that's an advantage of a generator like this. You can typically handle someone's whole house or most of their house, be able to plug in and help them out, even though for the most of the day you can run it at your own property. Now, if this is not complicated enough, there's yet one other style of generator, and I'm going to call that the portable combo generator. So it's a lot like a portable generator that we've discussed, the small ones, but it also includes typically an air compressor, sometimes a welder, and they give them cool names like welderator or compressorator. I don't know what they call them if they're welder and compressorators, but I love that name. You should buy one of those just because of the name. The purpose of those should be obvious, right? You need an air compressor in the field. You've also got a generator while you're there, right? You need a welder in the field. Well, welders are inherently electric devices, so you have a generator that's got an integrated welder. Those are special purpose, obviously, But if you need that purpose, that's a good way to go. So those are the major styles of generators. And like I said, we're going to focus on the tractor PTO generator because, well, we do tractors. I like the portability of the PTO generator. I've already got the tractor. Seems like that's not going to cost me anything. What would be a reason why I would not want to commit to running my tractor on a PTO generator? The biggest one, and the main one really, is cost. If you've got a new tractor like this one's got less than 100 hours on it, and you need to run a generator, let's say during a hurricane for 3, 4, 5 days while you're getting your power restored, that's going to add a lot of hours. Adding 100 hours to a tractor over a 3 or 4 day period is a pretty big cost. So in addition to the initial generator cost and in addition to the fuel charge, you have to think about the tractor depreciation. Now with this 3046R with less than 100 hours, that's a pretty big deal. For example, if I wanted to trade this tractor, they will do a calculation for trade value that will depreciate the tractor or show that it's worth less based on how many hours. And the newer the tractor, the more important those hours are. If the tractor has several thousand hours on it, then what's another 100, right? For example, we now have this 3520 that I bought at auction, yes, accidentally. And I think things are warming up in the house about that. I think Christy's finally seeing that the 3520 may fit in here pretty well. And one big advantage is that with those high number of hours, it's almost free to run that tractor from a depreciation standpoint. It's got 3,650 hours or something on it now. If it had 5,000 hours on it and it looked as nice as it does now, would it be worth any less to you guys? Think about it. Probably not. These engines will probably run 10,000 hours. So the hourly depreciation really declines as your tractor gets older. So if you have an older tractor, then running it on a generator will not cost you much other than the fuel, right? There's hardly anything that's going to be easier on a tractor than sitting stationary running only the PTO. So from being hard on the equipment, there's no problem with that. Tractors are meant to run wide open throttle or PTO speed, so there's not an issue there at all. So the main issue is cost, and then we've already talked about the other disadvantages, that it does not auto start. But I think that's more than made up for by the portability issues that we've discussed earlier as well. Let's dig into a little bit more detail on the differences between different models of generators. Of course, this is across manufacturers, it's not specific to Baumalight, but just some things that you might see that are different from less expensive to more expensive generators. And we'll start with a pretty major feature, and that is the number of poles, okay? Now this gets into some electromagnetic stuff that I learned about in third semester physics in college. I think I learned about it. I may have, well, I passed, but let's put it this way. That was a long time ago. So the way a generator works in general is there's copper wires coiled around the outside of magnets that kind of run opposite each other. The inner one spins, maybe the outer one spins too, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure just the inner one spins. And there's a north pole and a south pole on the cheapest generators, right? So this is magnetic again. So as that spins, that's what generates the power. You get to higher end generators and they have a 4-pole. So they'll have a north pole and a south pole, and then they'll have another north pole and a south pole, only it's east and west. Anyway, a 4-pole generator only needs to spin that inner piece half as fast, okay? So it spins at 1800 RPM to get 60 hertz or 60 cycles per second in the sine wave, whereas a 2-pole generator has to spin 3600 RPM to get that same 60 cycles per second, which is what you need. 60 hertz or 60 cycles per second is what you need to run alternating current, what's used in your house, 120 volt or 240 volt. So the 2-pole generators are cheaper. They have less copper wire in them, for one thing. That's probably one of the bigger improvements in cost, right? When I was reading some technical details, the 2 poles might be just a tad bit more efficient. But from what I'm understanding, that's much more than offset by the advantages of a 4-pole generator. By spinning slower, you're going to get a little more longevity. Okay, so this one's spinning at 1800 RPMs. It's a 4-pole. You're going to get a little more longevity, which makes sense, right? Spinning it half as fast ought to last longer. I'm not sure that's really going to be an issue for most of us, right? I mean, wearing out one of these generators is unlikely. But the other advantage is going to be a little more difficult for me to explain. We're feeding 540 RPM in. There's a gearbox that changes that speed to the appropriate, in this case 1800, in the 2-pole case to 3600. At a high level, the way they describe it is that it's dirtier power if you are spinning faster, because any change in the RPM of your input, any change of the RPM of the engine on your tractor is going to have a bigger change on the frequency, you know, the 60 cycles per second of the output, okay? So it's magnified, right? It goes from 540 to 3600, so any change of engine RPM is going to have a bigger change to the electrical output. So the issue with that is potentially computer hardware. Some people are even saying some furnaces had issue with 2-pole generators and, you know, that dirtier power as they refer to it. I have only one experience with a generator that did not work right for me, and I had a laser printer back in the 90s when I lived in North Carolina, and we had a hurricane come through, and I had one of the little portables, and sure enough, the laser printer just couldn't handle it. It couldn't keep itself running. It would power on and then it would power off, and then, yeah, it just would not print. And it's kind of strange that I would need a laser printer when the power's out, but I did. That's my only experience. My understanding is that it can affect a lot of technical equipment. Well, there's a lot of high-tech equipment available now, so this might be an issue for you. This is a long-winded way of saying that a 4-pole generator is going to provide cleaner power, and that cleaner power might be important in your scenario. Now, another aspect of cleaner power is an additional feature that is on this higher end one as well, and that is a voltage regulator. So even if the frequency changes anywhere from 64 to 56 hertz, that's a pretty big range, then this particular unit has a voltage regulator that will keep the voltage right at 240 volts. Okay, so we're going to at least keep that voltage constant even if the frequency changes. Now, don't ask me exactly how that works. That's going to be over my head. But the smaller entry-level generators just aren't capable of pulling that off. They don't have those types of controls built in. So at the lowest end in the Baumalight line is the TX model, and you can loosely compare it to the Chinese models that you see from the other manufacturers. Now, it does not use Chinese components, but it has a similar feature set, right? So it's a 2-pole generator, but it does use European or US or Canada-based components. That's the TX line, and that compares to these kind of entry-level PTO generators, or the little portable generators that we see. They're also 2-pole, I believe. Now, at the higher end, this is the KR series. This one is a 30 kilowatt generator. Now, notice we haven't talked much about sizing your generator in this episode, and we're not going to. I got too much stuff to talk about. We'll talk about sizing in a later episode when we actually try this out on our tractors and see if we can overload our tractors. We should be with a 30 kilowatt generator, as long as we can find appropriate usages. We should be able to really tax these little tractors. When you get to this higher KR series, you get a 4-pole generator. This one weighs 610 pounds. It's got a lot of copper in there. Again, spins at 1800 RPM, 30 kilowatt. It's got a display on the front here which is much more advanced than anything I've seen on any other generator that I've been around. It tells you the exact voltage output, the exact frequency output to the 10th, so you'll see 60.1, 60 point whatever, 60.9. It's got an LED to show you whether you're running the tractor at an appropriate speed or whether it's under speed or over speed. You can see that from the tractor, so this display is really handy. You don't see any of that on the lower end generators. Some of them, you're lucky if you even have some sort of an analog voltmeter on them. So the TX line does have this analog meter to give you some degree of visibility there, but some of the cheaper ones than that, I don't know, you may not even have that. This KR line, all the major internal components come from Italy. The higher end QC line starts off at a single phase. Okay, I haven't even talked about single phase versus three phase, but the QC line starts off at a single phase that's very similar to this, only it has USA made components. But it steps on up into the three phase line. So I would recommend that if you're wanting the more advanced features and yet you're still single phase, stick with the KR. If you're needing three phase, you have to step up to the QC line. And those things are, well, they're very expensive, but they're also incredibly powerful. That's a light up a city kind of thing. Let's take a look at the back panel here. This is the overall switch off and on, so you can get your tractor running, get your PTO up to speed before you ever switch the power on. Okay, it takes all the power out of the generator. You would use this, and by the way, there's a 10-foot cable that comes with this generator to connect to your whole house plug on your house. I intend to put one of those whole house plugs on my house. I will do that hopefully soon. We'll show that in another episode, and we'll get it all hooked up so that we can do a formal transfer. We'll do it right. None of this plugging into the nearest 220 volt or 240 volt outlet and turning off the main. So, but we will take a little bit of a shortcut, but come back for our next episode on that. This plug takes the entire output. This is a couple of Anderson connectors, right? So that's look pretty standard there. Okay, this is a 50 amp. They call it a welder plug, right? So this is a standard 50 amp plug. Here's your breaker for that. We've got two duplex outlets here for 120 volt outlets. Each of those have a circuit breaker on that. I believe they're 20 amp outlets, so pretty standard with the exception of this larger plug here for your whole house. This is 125 amp. This thing's capable of if you put a big enough tractor on it. Again, we're going to talk about the size tractor in another episode, so don't get too hung up on that at this point. Some of you are saying, this is a wasted episode. All he did was talk. Yeah, I just didn't feel like I could get everything we needed covered in one episode. I thought there was some basics that we needed to talk about generators before we could actually get out. Stick with me. I promise you we'll get this guy out, and we'll try it on several different tractors. One of the most interesting tractors that we might try it on, yep, it's Sparky, the Select Track electric tractor. I think that'll be fun to see how it compares, and yeah, it's going to be a little bit odd, right? An electric tractor driving a generator to generate electricity. I already thought about it, and so did you. No, you can't run a cable back to charge the tractor. The tractor will not run while a charger's plugged in. But that would have been fun, just to see how long it would have run trying to charge its own battery. Yeah, that would have been fun. Meanwhile, hopefully this has been some help to help you choose between the different styles of generators that you want and to understand a little bit more technically about why some generators are pretty expensive and some are not expensive. It's more than just the color of the paint, as they sometimes say, or it's more than just the brand. There really are differences, and what you need versus what you can afford, well, that's going to be up to each of you to decide. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on Tractor Time with Tim. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance.